Welcome to our Meet the Experts Costume Designers panel. I'm here with Megan Stark-Evans from Sound of Metal, Lou Eyrich from the Prom, and Susan Lyall from the Child of the Chicago 7. Now, these films are all so different from each other from a story and a costume perspective, but I wonder how similar or different the process is of approaching a film, like depending on what the style of it or the scope of it or the time period of it. Let's start with Lou.
Hey Susan, hey Megan, nice to meet you.
Nice to see
I've
you.
met Susan before, but love your work, and I think that it's a great panel because our shows are all so different.
Agreed. I think that's really actually brilliant. Yeah.
And I think that listening to you both, you had a completely different process than I did. Susan, you're having to be so precise to an actual event, and but being able to put your own signature on it is great. And Megan having to create these characters out of nothing, correct? Like you had to design the whole concept of each character within a budget. And for me, for the Prom, it was almost opposite from both. It's like it was already a Broadway play, but we were remaking it the Ryan Murphy way. And it was, I hadn't shopped contemporary for years. So that was a big shift for me, like going into a mall, going into Neiman Marcus and, all over, or even internet shopping. It had been a while. I'd been doing period for years. So it was really fun and, but also really challenging because I forgot, like, if it's not in the store, you got to make it. And that's a bigger, longer process, especially with all the sequins and beading and stuff. So for me, that was the difference this time around from what both Megan and Susan did.
Yeah, I think also, yes, we all had incredibly different projects, but then you couple that with incredibly different directors. I mean, Megan, I don't exactly know what the director of Sound of Metal, how he weighs in, but I know that Ryan Murphy weighs in significantly. But Aaron Sorkin does not really weigh in. He just, he just tells me things like, don't make it too 60s and things like that. I mean, it's really, you really have to sort of, not mind read exactly, but it's not, and I don't mean this to sound like he's not opinionated. He is, and we communicate with photos back and forth and so on, and he will say which one he doesn't like. It's not an issue that, but if you give him too many, he gets dizzy. And so it has to be you have to really handle it, curate it in a way that it is, you move forward and don't cause too much tumult. So I personally love the system, and it's great for me. And but it's not like, and also, by the way, when you work with a director like that, the way Ryan Murphy as well, is that's where it ends. There's no one else that needs to weigh in and look at things, and there's not this enormous committee effort that happens with some studio films that just can send you off the deep end. I mean, you get it all, you get it all done. You're good with the actor, you're good with the director, and all of a sudden these, like, the last minute, all the emails start pinging in, and I really like working with someone who can it's just done. It's between myself, the director, and the actor, and we're ready.
Yeah.
So. That is such a blessing. For my movie, Darius Marder, the director, he actually wrote the script, and he worked on it for 10 years trying to get it made. And so he had a great idea of who these people were, or at least an idea of what their backstories were. And I love a backstory, something I can dig into and come up with my own ideas about what they might wear based off of that backstory. So that was really helpful for me. And it being a small film, the nice thing about indies is you don't have these, all these different entities weighing in. Like you do in bigger things unless it's a Ryan Murphy. So it's, basically between Darius, the director, and the actors and I, which is just such a blessing.
There is something nice about working with the director-writer, because they really know what they meant when they wrote it. So you don't have to sort of second guess what the notes meant, or just it's very helpful.
It's true. And when they write in a piece of clothing specifically, it has a purpose. It's not just a placeholder open to interpretation.
There are so many ways into the world of clothing, fashion, costumes. Like what were sort of the inspirations, like any particular films or costume designers or fashion designers that sort of drew you into kind of the world of costume design? Megan, we could start with you.
I grew up in the Midwest, and I had no idea that this was a career that you could have. But I was always a lover of movies. So when I was a child, I grew up watching Wizard of Oz, I think every day for about 3 years. And I would put on my Dorothy outfit that my mom had made me, and I would stand in front of the TV wrapped for the duration of the film. So I still love that movie. So that was influential. I would say, gosh, there's so many things. I mean, things like Annie Hall, where they took it was kind of groundbreaking in its androgyny, looking to period films, Bonnie and Clyde, how it was set in the 30s, but it had this 60s sensibility to it, and it actually pushed fashion so much in that time. But I had no idea that this was a career. So when I went to college in LA, I thought I was going to college for broadcast journalism, and in the film and television school at the college I went to. And it turned out, obviously, my college was in Los Angeles, so it was much more focused on film and TV. And that's where I found my place. And I just thought, well, this is perfect. This is how I want to tell stories. And so I was influenced at that point by the mentors that I had.
Well, I loved the animated Cinderella, when the mice and the birds fixed her dress. I think that probably was my starting point. So,
that's a good one.
I started in theater in New York, and I really took to it. And I was always someone who sewed, and I was a history and film major in college. And I did not know that you could actually make a movie, make a living in movies in clothing. But I did love the theater, and I, just sheer, one of those stories. Someone needed someone on a film. And the first film I worked on, you're not going to believe this, I was Betty Davis's dresser. Okay.
Wow.
I know. Okay. And I didn't even know what a dresser was. And I can't say I really functioned as a dresser. I was just there. And it was an HBO film. And, it makes me sound like I'm 100, but it was my first film. Okay. I'm just saying. But, I worked with Miss Davis. So.
That's great.
And I just thought, are you just, when you work on movies, you work with like Betty Davis?
Love to hear some of those stories.
I was like Megan, raised in the Midwest, small town, and like Susan, didn't know a business like film business even existed. There wasn't much of it where I grew up, and I was just vintage girl. I just dressed head to toe in vintage, and I loved old Ginger Rogers, Fred Astaire dance movies. I loved all the gowns and the dancing, and watched them endlessly. And but I never really thought about being in it. It kind of chose me, as woo-woo as that sounds. It really just chose me, and it's a blur how it all happened. I still don't remember. I still just sometimes wonder how I ended up here, but I'm grateful.
I always wonder, like when you spend so much of your time and your career dealing in clothes and fashion and different characters and different periods, does any of it sort of like find you like transforming your own style or influencing what you like and the kind of ways it can kind of portray you in a way? Susan, you can start us.
You know, that's a good question. I actually think that the longer I do this, the more anchored I become in my own personal style. And I'm getting really good at knowing what's going to really last. And I'm very, I don't know. I don't know if this ever happens to you, Megan, or you, Lou, where people go, "Oh, you must love Halloween," and I'm like, "I loathe Halloween." Okay, so I actually I prefer, and especially as you age, you want to be sort of just look. If you're photographed, it's going to look good in 20 years too. And I don't like to be, I don't want a trend of the moment. It doesn't really work unless you're in your 20s, maybe. But it has made me oddly maybe more conservative in a way. Conservative is not really the right word, just more controlled, and really have a much better understanding of proportion. I will say that, and silhouette, and that has definitely developed over the years. Just at a glance, does it look good? And that's So
I happen to love fashion. I don't have time to really keep up on it much, but I do love it, and I love dressing, and but I keep wanting to have a uniform to keep it easier. I try, and then I get bored. I just get bored with it, and I just want to wear something fun and bright and ridiculous, and that's kind of it, and it's all over the board. One day I'll have a tracksuit on, and the next day I'll be in a full-length cashmere dress. I don't know. It's just there's no rhythm or rhyme to it, but it's very eclectic for me.
I'm a bit of a chameleon. I guess I could say that I would be influenced by what I'm working on in the moment to a certain extent, but I'm also a freak about fit. So the things that make it past my threshold of fit and all my requirements to make it into my actual closet, there's not that many of them. And really I'm a vintage lover for my whole life. And the only thing that really interests me in terms of shopping is vintage, personally.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
That really sparks my, I don't know, it really gets me going. And you find stuff when you're out shopping, and you find stuff on the, things on the runway that you want to emulate or whatever. But yeah, there's something about something that's had a life before you and that's one of a kind, or, at this point anyway, pretty much one of a kind, because all the duplicates of it have gotten ravaged by time. That feels good.
I would say that the prom did not make me want to run out and buy any prom dresses.
I know.
I would wear a man's tuxedo.
Yeah.
I would wear all of those men's tuxedos in the film, by the way. If you have any extras, you can send them to me. And you all mentioned like sort of coming up, like not even really thinking of this as like a career path that one could take. Like, what would you kind of say to someone who has an interest or is coming up in fashion or costume design, or advice maybe you wish you had gotten when you were coming up? Lou, how about you?
That's always a tricky one. Like, one part of me wants to say run. Run away! Because the hours are long and you don't really, I mean, maybe Megan and Susan experience it differently, but when you're working, you are working, and you kind of, your friends drop aside, your husband, your kid, your partner, whatever. It's like you just are in it, and you resolve to that. And if it's your passion, it's fine, but it does eat away, or in my life anyway, it's eaten away at a lot of, I've lost a lot of important events and things like that, but I don't really have any regret, because when you do feel like you have a creative spirit, and when you're fulfilling that creative spirit, it just feeds you. And so if it's your passion, I think you'll know it. I think that when it's your passion, like the three of us, it will kind of flow for you, and you will know the minute you try it. If you get bitten by that bug and you're like, I have to do this. That's like, if you can get in the door, or if you're trying to, a lot of students who just graduate from school, like any of the design schools, to try to PA or intern. We can't intern right now with COVID, but getting a PA job, you really get a feel for it, and you'll know like whether you can hack it or not, or if it's something I really got to do. That's what I've had a lot of people reach out over COVID, just asking advice, and so we built kind of a summer mentorship, and just getting on Zoom calls and telling them what it's like to be a PA or what it's like to be a designer, and then trying to, when film started back up again, trying to get them placed places to dip their toe in it.
I do think it. If I was to tell my younger self, I think the amount of work, how consuming it is something I didn't understand, but I totally embraced. So I think you, like Lou said, if you're cut out for it, you're going to do it. But I do think it's a little like being an actor or a musician, is that you really, you kind of just have to do it. It's not even, it's too hard to not love it. So that, I would really stress that.
I would echo what you guys said. I mean, it is so hard. There are parts of your life that fall away, and I've tried to make some boundaries, but it depends on the show. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't, and sometimes you disappear to another country for 5 months. But that's a really fun part of it too, is you get paid to go to these incredible places and meet interesting people and travel. So if you are able to intern or PA and just get in there and see what the true everyday life of it is like, and then you will get an immediate sense of whether or not it's right for you. But then also I would give the advice that I didn't really take. When I was younger, I was always very timid about contacting people. I always felt like, I would take time away from their day. They don't want to hear from some random lowly, 20-year-old. And now that people sometimes email me, I can see how responsive everyone actually is to that, to giving advice, to opening a door to somebody who's interested. And so my advice would be, be shameless, reach out, tell people you're available. Tell people you admire their work and you want to PA for them, and then keep following up, because everybody gets busy and sometimes you forget to return that email, but it doesn't mean that you're not interested.
That's actually really true. That's very good advice, is that, we just don't, pay attention all the time. But I would also advise young people that if you are going to do that, make sure that you check all your spelling and check your and make it seem like you really tried. And if you give a reference, make sure they know that you're giving them as a reference, so that if I call them, you don't get a bad reference. That's important. And I would also advise young designers that if you get the chance to do some little indie film, or just, a student film, is do it. Do it, be the costume designer. If you want to be a costume designer, just be the costume designer. Because no matter what, you will have been the costume designer for that 15-minute film. And you were not the PA, you ran the department, no matter what it is. And that can never be taken away from you. I do tell people that. It's like, if you get the chance, just grab it, and you'll understand what it means to be, holding the ball for the show. And you can't, it's not for everybody, but some people prefer to work their way up. But certainly when I started, there was no such thing as a coordinator or even a PA. There was nothing like that. So you just, I used to track the whole show in the back of my notebook. So I feel like that is a good experience for young people if you're get that chance, just do it.
I will point out that you got to start with Betty Davis.
That's right. And sometime when I meet you in person, we'll discuss, because I have some pretty good stories about that.
Wow.
Yes.
Well, I want to thank you, all three of you, so much for your time and for talking with me, and for really letting me get to know such very different kinds of costume design that all three of you were involved in. And it's been a pleasure talking with all of you.
Thank you.
Daniel.
Thank you so much. It's great to meet both of you.
Bye, Megan.
Bye.